The Justice Department asking a Manhattan court to make years-old grand jury testimony related to the Jeffrey Epstein case public. Paula Reed joins us again. And Paula, you've had a couple minutes now to go through this grand jury ask. Again, for everybody watching, this is just one small part of the Epstein documents writ large. There's a lot that the Trump folks are not asking to release. But on this small part, what can you tell us?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wanted to see what argument they were going to make here to this judge. They're arguing that all of this is in the public interest. And I will say the Justice Department has not gotten a lot right on the messaging about this effort. But here it appears that the Attorney General Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, they're at least striking the right tone. Look, I don't know if this is going to work, but what they're writing here, they're saying, quote, public officials, lawmakers, pundits, and ordinary citizens remain deeply interested and concerned about the Epstein matter. They are noting the fact that in other places they have released portions of grand jury transcripts after concluding that the Epstein case qualifies as a matter of public concern. After all, Jeffrey Epstein, they say, is, quote, the most infamous pedophile in American history. The facts surrounding the Epstein case tell a tale of national disgrace. They argue the grand jury records are thus critical pieces of an important moment in our nation's history. They also argue that they understand there are privacy interests for victims and accusers, and they believe that a lot of the privacy concerns are diminished by the fact that Epstein is, of course, deceased, but they're willing to work with prosecutors to try to redact anything that could potentially impact victims. So the arguments here, they are well articulated. As you have said, though, this is just a tiny portion of the evidence that exists, and now the judge will likely want to allow those accusers, victims, their lawyers to weigh in on this possibility because grand jury material is by default confidential. And look, even if the judge decides that he will release some of this, there are still going to be questions about all the rest of the material that the Justice Department itself has the power to release and has not done so.
Right, and just to underline it again for folks, this is the grand jury testimony related to the prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The questions and the reason why people want more accountability, Jeffrey Epstein's dead, Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison, is because they're questions of all the other people who may have been involved. They will not necessarily be mentioned in this because the prosecutors were not going after them.
That's exactly right. Highly unlikely that any of those other individuals are mentioned here. But the Attorney General, I really think it's important to note that she said last week that they reviewed this case and they don't believe that they have evidence to go after any third parties. But clearly, the public is not satisfied by that.
Meanwhile, there remain unresolved mysteries surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. Joining us now is award-winning Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie K. Brown. She exposed many horrific details of the Epstein sex trafficking story previously not brought to light. In fact, it was her 2018 story that brought this all back into the fore. She's the author of a great book on the subject that I highly recommend. It's called Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein story. Came out in 2021. Julie, thanks for joining us again. There's still so many documents about Epstein that can be released outside of what Trump has asked Bondi to ask the judge to release in the grand jury report in the investigation into Ghislaine Maxwell. There's Epstein's autopsy report, financial transactions, FBI investigation, interview transcripts, how the FBI and the Justice Department handled the case back in 2008, how they handled the case in 2019. Why do you think none of this has been made public, and do you think there's going to be more pressure on the president to release such information? Let me just ask you even a more narrow question. What do you, as an investigative reporter, if you could get one tranche of this information that has been held back, delivered right to you for your next scoop, what would you want?
I'd want his financial records, to be honest with you, because I think that's the smoking gun here. Epstein's finances and how he made his money, who he got money from. I honestly think that the way to go with this would be to follow the money and look at his finances. But to go back a little bit, just to this grand jury effort that he is mounting right now. I was able to speak to a couple of victims and lawyers that represent the victims, and they're very skeptical about what's happening here because they believe that there are certain words that are being used by the Justice Department and by the president, words like pertinent and credible, and that those to them are words that mean that they might not be getting everything, even with asking for the grand jury records because they believe that those kinds of things are being used to siphon off records that maybe they don't consider are pertinent or credible. So they're very skeptical about all this. The other point I want to make about the grand jury records is as far as we know, and my sources in the case have said, is the Justice Department only focused on prosecuting first Epstein, and then when he, died, then Maxwell. It was a very narrow investigation. They didn't go into anything beyond that. They didn't go into any other aspect of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring. So most of the information that I know about is probably information that's already out there that we know that has been revealed during trial.
Jeffrey Epstein's former attorney, David Schoen, who also represented President Trump during his second impeachment trial, said this earlier today on CNN. Take a listen.
There is no Epstein client list, that I can tell you, that lists names of people who he purportedly took to an island with young girls or any place else with young women. I can assure you he would have used that to his advantage if there were. And I can assure you the accusers who were involved in those situations, if they were involved with fill in the blank, some famous person, they would have sued by now. Their lawyers are very aggressive and have made millions off of those lawsuits.
What's your response?
Oh, gosh. They did sue. They sued a lot of powerful men. We just don't know about it because when you sue somebody that powerful, they settle. And so there were plenty of lawsuits that the victims filed against these powerful men. That's part of what their lawyers did. And it's been all settled all quietly, and we just don't know about it. So that's just simply not true.
Schoen says he met with Epstein 9 days before Epstein was found dead in his cell in 2019, and they discussed several topics, including Trump. Take a listen.
I specifically asked him about Donald Trump, and he was adamant in making clear that he had no bad information about Trump. Remember, Trump had thrown him out of his club years earlier. He wasn't happy about the idea of Trump being falsely accused because Trump was one of the names being thrown around then.
Now, there's still a lot unknown about Trump and Epstein's relationship, although nothing illegal has credibly been put forward. But according to the Wall Street Journal's news story, there's this letter bearing Trump's name with a drawing, a crude sketch of a naked woman that was part of this birthday book for Epstein in 2003. Again, that's 2 years before Epstein was ever accused of anything untoward with underage girls. The Wall Street Journal says the letter concludes with the line, quote, "Happy birthday and may every day be another wonderful secret." Again, President Trump vehemently denies this. He writing on Truth Social, quote, "These are not my words, not the way I talk. Also, I don't draw pictures." He's also filing this libel suit against the Wall Street Journal and News Corp and Rupert Murdoch. On the drawings, just as a side note, here's a sketch Trump drew in 2005 of the New York City skyline. It was sold at an auction for nearly $30,000 in 2017. But regardless, what questions do you have when it comes to the president and Epstein and their relationship?
Well, let me just set the record straight. I know what he said that Epstein told him when he was in prison, but Epstein told his own brother, and his brother has been public about this, that he told him that if the public knew everything that he knew about Trump, they would have to cancel the election. And that's his brother's words, not mine. So there is something there. I'm not saying it means that the president did anything illegal or he was involved with Epstein's operation at all. But, the story that he told his brother is different from the story that he told that lawyer, number one. The other point I wanted to make is, he also said there's no list. I agree that there probably isn't a list, but my understanding is that Epstein kept files, and he did keep files on people. I don't know whether the Justice Department got their hands on those files, but Epstein had some kind of records. It might not have been, and I don't believe it was, in a formal list that everybody wants to refer to. So I just think that Epstein told different people different things, and it's hard to know really, what's true and what's not true.
Once again, Julie Brown's book is called Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein story. I highly recommend it for anybody interested in this story, and she's done so much excellent journalism related to this case and standing up for the victims of these atrocities. Julie Brown, thank you so much. Always good to have you here.